Page 106, Parsha's Chayei Sarah. So the last Parsha ends with the Akedah, where Avraham Avinu has passed the test of sacrificing Yitzchak, which he didn't end up doing, but he passed the test. And then it ends with the birth of Rivka. He tells us that Rivka is born, which is Yitzchak Avinu's soulmate. And then the Torah goes like this: Vayu Chayei Sarah mea shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. The years of Sarah were 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, the years of the life of Sarah. So the Torah breaks it down into units. They were 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. And Rashi points out that the reason it does this is to tell us that just as she was 100 years, like 20 years, just as when she was 20 years, she hadn't sinned, which means you're not accountable for your sins till you're 20 years old in heavenly court. So, but she was free of sin by the time she was 100, just like she was free of sin when she was 20. And when she was 20, she was beautiful at 20 like she was beautiful at 7. Which begs a question, because most guys will be more attracted to a 20-year-old than a 7-year-old. Right? Frankly, they hear the Torah says, well, she was as beautiful at 20 as she was at 7. But, most 7-year-olds, really, you're not as, 20-year-olds are more beautiful than 7-year-olds. So the Meforshim talk about over here about at 7 years old, she didn't need makeup. 7-year-olds don't need makeup. 20-year-olds are already putting on makeup. The meaning that her natural beauty was such that she didn't have to tamper with it. Whatever the case is, it tells us that she was, that each stage, that's why it breaks it up into these different units, number one. Number two, Rashi then says, this is the second, third line of Rashi, he addresses the obvious question. Now, before we look at Rashi, I'll tell you, you're going to have to come up with the question. Let's read that pasuk again. Vayu Chayei Sarah mea shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah, the years of the life of Sarah. Anything bothering you about that? Yeah, Mike.
Why can't it just say 127 years? Why does it have to say 100 years?
So that we already answered, that each one is telling you what that unit was like. But now there's another question. What's bothering you out there, Alicia? What's bothering you about that? The years of the life of Sarah, the thing that should be bothering you. What should be bothering you besides me? What should be bothering you? Yes, go ahead. That bothers all of us. It's very sad. Sarah's going to die. Yeah, that is sad. But what about the structure of the pasuk should bother us? Something in the pasuk should bother us. You're right. She's going to die, and it bothers us. But what's something about the pasuk? Nothing bothering you in the pasuk? Why does it repeat?
You're talking about her in like past tense, guy?
Why does it? What?
You're talking about her in past tense.
What?
They're talking about her in past tense.
Well, it's talking
of a dead person, basically.
Well, that she died. Well, she's going to die. Well, it's a way of speaking. It was the life of Sarah was because, and then the very next passage was the Tama Sarah. But it repeats. Why does it say? It says, Vayu Chayei Sarah mea shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah, the years of the life of Sarah. Why does it have to repeat that? I told you, I had a teacher in sophomore year in high school. He was a crude, coarse ex-Marine who we despised, and he had tattoos. He was not Jewish, and he did not like us. We despised him, and he was cruel, every negative adjective. And he had two bad habits. First of all, when he lectured us, he would lecture with his glasses. He'd poke his glasses at us. Something very demeaning about having somebody talk to you like that. He would lecture us. And the second thing, he would periodically repeat the last word of a sentence. Because he felt somehow that made him look sophisticated, right? And we were simply annoyed. Okay. Now, I got a pretty vivid imagination. I could not make this up if I wanted to. He was handing back our test papers. He said, gentlemen, the problem with your papers, there was too much repetition. I'm telling you. Of course, I was sitting in the front row, and I was worried, I had to bite my lip off not to laugh. this yuckle. So that was the only thing I learned in sophomore English, by the way. There are certain things that need to be repeated. Here, the Torah repeats. The Torah repeats. The Torah repeats. It says, "Vayu Chayei Sarah, Mea Shana Vesu Shana Shnei Chayei Sarah," and it repeats the years of the life. Well, you introduce it by saying these are the life of Sarah. So why does it repeat again Shnei Chayei Sarah? So Rashi here, if you notice the second line of Rashi, third line of Rashi says Shnei Chayei Sarah Kulon Shavin Litova. They were all equal for good. Hold for a second, Lisha. They were all equal for good. All the years, the life of Sarah, they were all equal for good. Now, that itself is a little strange. I mean, you're talking about a woman who, for about 90 years, she was childless. She was taken by 2 foreign kings in seriously dangerous situations. I mean, it was just so wonderful. It was just such a wonderful. All of her life was just so wonderful. Not only that, there are Mefarshim that say the word shnei, which means years, can also mean what in Hebrew? Shnei, 2. So there are commentaries that actually say Sarah had 2 lives. Shnei Chayei Sarah, 2 lives of Sarah. You know why? Because the Gemara says that a childless woman is as if she's dead. So up until 90 years old, it was as if she was not alive. Then she had a second life, which was what? When Yitzchak was born. When he was born. Now, how many years did Yitzchak live? 37. Look at the first word on the Parsha. Vayiyu. Let's do the math. The Vav is 6. A Yud is 10. A Hey is 5. That's 21. That's blackjack. And then a Yud, another Yud is 31. And a Vav is 37. Vayu Chayei Sarah. The real life of Sarah, how long was she alive for? 37, which was the amount of years that she had Yitzchak. That's why it says Shnei Chayei Sarah. There were 2 units of life. There was 90 years, and then there were 30, then there were 37 years, and she lived to 127. 1 second. That's all entertainment. But what does Rashi mean when he says they were all good? Rashi says Kulon Shavim Latova. They were all equal. Again, Rashi's quoting the man. Wait a minute, they were all good. I mean, they were all good. That sounds so good to me. Sounds like she had a pretty hard life, as a matter of fact. Not only that, then she brings in a maidservant, and that maidservant gets pregnant right away, and Sarah's got to go through that. What kind of, that's such a wonderful, so also wonderful over here. Well, so wonderful. So the Mefarshim say, what does it mean, Kula Shav? That doesn't mean that the objective realities of her life were good. She had plenty of problems. Like everybody's got problems. Some people have money problems. Some people have health issues. Some people are from Cleveland. Everybody's got problems in life. Everybody's got problems in life. So what do you call? What the Kulan Shah? The answer is that her behavior was always good. Kulan Shavin Litova. It made no difference to Sarah. It made no what the external circle. Some people on a good day were wonderful. When you have a head cold or you're not feeling well, then the world knows about it. I had a friend at camp. I remember he was a big guy too. He said, I can't sleep. I remember it was night. I said, I can't sleep. If I can't sleep, nobody sleeps. Right? Some people are like that. Right? When women are pregnant in the house, and often they can't sleep. I got news for you. If she can't sleep, you don't sleep. Right? Because there's certain people who, when they're not feeling well, they're just moaning and groaning, and everybody's got to know about it. Everybody's got to know. There are other people, anybody can be nice when things are going your way. The trick is to be nice when things aren't going your way. The greatness of a Sarah Imenu is, she's suffering, but just because she's suffering doesn't mean everybody around her has to suffer. So maybe she was suffering, but she was still the same kind Balas Chesed Sarah. Kulon Shavim Litova. Made no difference how she treated people after she had Yitzchak and before she had Yitzchak. She treated people the same way. Kulon Shavim Litova. When she threw her out of the house, that she did for the good of throwing her out of the house. She had to be thrown out of the house. That was not because, just because you're treating people well doesn't mean, sometimes treating somebody well could be a mistreatment. If a guy comes up to you on the street and he's got a rusty needle dangling out of his arm and he says, hey buddy, can you spare $5? And you give him the $5, you're not treating him well, you're doing the worst thing in the world for him. If a guy who's an alcoholic comes over and he says, "If you got a couple of shots for me," and you give him the booze, you're not doing just because that's not the right thing to do. Treating him nicely over there means not giving him what he wants. Giving a kid too much candy isn't the right thing. That's not. Kulon Shavin Latova means her mood wasn't affected, even though she had difficult circumstances. Okay. Alicia, what were we going to ask? But question, not questions, not comments. What were we going to ask?
I was going to ask about the name change. Does the name change have to do any significance with the...
Which name change?
From Sarai to Sarah.
There's no, it didn't affect her lifespan, no. Okay. Now, it didn't take her time to have her name changed. It was very quick. It just went from a Sarai to a Sarah. Oh, but we are going to have later on. No, I wanted to get you, at least I wanted to get you last week's Parsha on this, because we're going to have on page, where,
While you're looking for that, I kind of like...
one second, Alicia, just 1 second. I want to show you where you're going to have to help me out over here for a second. And
Why does Levon have...
1 second. We're going to get there. Take a look at Vayishta page 110. Page 110. Look what we got over there. I'm just skipping way ahead just because I want to do this. Do you see 5 lines from the bottom? 5 lines from the bottom. Only Hebrew. We are the Hebrews, right? So only Hebrew. Only for 5 lines on the bottom. You see first word Vayomar, first word in the pasuk. Look at this. Look at the trup over there, gentlemen. A zigzag, which is what? Take it, Oli. Vayomar. Close. Vayomar. Okay, everybody together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Vayomar. That's a shalshelis. We were supposed to do that last. We had one. There are only 6, I think, either 4 or 6 of those in the entire Torah. How many? 4? 4 or 6? 4. 4 in the entire Torah. Okay, we're going to get there. Now, back to where we were. Very important concept. 1 second. Alicia, 1 second. Okay. What just happened at the end of the very important concept? What just happened in the end of the previous Parsha was you had the Akedah. Okay. Now, after the Akedah, the Medrash says, how did Sarah die? Hold on, Alicia, hold. How did Sarah die? The Satan came to her, and he said, by the way, there's news, Avram took Yitzchak, and he was going to shecht him. Now, there are different versions of what happened. There's one opinion that he never even got to say the next line that he wasn't shechted. She died as soon as the shock that Yitzchak was going to be shechted. The other is that the Satan sent a message that Yitzchak was shechted. Then he appeared to her and said, no, he wasn't shechted. And the shock of the joy of knowing that he wasn't, in other words, she first heard Yitzchak was shechted, so she was upset. When he suddenly came in and said Yitzchak wasn't shechted, so she had a heart attack from the joy, and therefore she died. And that's why later on in the Torah, when Yosef is discovered to be alive, because of this, how do the brothers break the news to Yaakov that he's alive? They send in Serach Bas Asher with the harp to sing it and break it gently because he can't go in and shock him. So I told you once a famous story about the old man Murphy. Old man Murphy won $10 million in the lottery. So the family was nervous how they're going to break the news to him. So they hired a professional psychologist to come in and break the news to figure out how to tell him. To win $10 million is a big shock. So the psychologist came in and he said, Murph, what would you do if I told you that you won $100? He goes, well, I'd keep 100, I'd keep 50, give 50 to you. He said, what if I told you won $10,000? I said, well, I'd take 5,000, give 5,000 to you. He said, what if I told you won $10 million? I said, well, I'd take 5 million, got 5 million to you. Psychologist had a heart attack and dropped dead on the spot. So the what do you call it? Sarah Imenu, what do you call it? The shock killed her. Now, listen carefully. Avram Avinu, 1 second, we're going to come back to this in a second. There's a very big mistake here that people make. If you look at the end of the pasuk again, it says, "Vayu Chayei Sarah 100 shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah." So there's an incident that happened here in Israel, a tragic incident. A couple, there was a guy was driving, it was Lag BaOmer, and the people went up to Meron. You know, the people go up to the Meron on Lag BaOmer. So there's a man who was driving back, and there was a woman there. A couple needed a ride. They asked for a ride back to Yerushalayim. So the guy gave them a ride, and apparently he fell asleep at the wheel and lost control of the car, and they had an accident. And the woman who they gave a ride to, the woman died. She was a mother of 13 children, and the women died. So everybody was devastated. And then the driver of the car, at a certain point, he came to the house when the mourners were sitting in the house, sitting Shiva. So he came in, and the father and the husband were sitting Shiva. The father lost his daughter, and the husband lost his wife. And this guy came in, and he was devastated. The driver was devastated. It's not clear if he hit a stone or if he fell asleep, whatever, but he was devastated because he was the driver. So he came into the house, and the father of the woman said to him, why are you so devastated? So the guy said, and her name was Sarah, by the way. The woman's name was Sarah. And he said, well, why am I devastated? Because I was driving the car and I caused the death. Look at the trouble that I've caused. And the father said, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. He said, you know, the Torah says, so people think, well, what caused her death? What caused her death was the news of the Akedah, right? So the Torah repeats, Shnei Chayei Sarah. That was her allotment for life. What was the thing that at 127 years put her to death? It was hearing about the Akedah. If it wouldn't have been that, it would have been a heart attack. If it wouldn't have been that, it would have been something else. This happened to be the thing that put it. Why did she have to die this way? Why did she have to die this way? Because if you remember when the Malach said, you're going to have a son, she laughed cynically. She didn't believe when she should have, and therefore she died by believing what she shouldn't have. So that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought it around in this way. But at the end of the day, how long was she going to live for? She was going to live 127 years. So sometimes people confuse the cause and the effect. There is a cause, but the effect would have been there anyway. Just we don't want to be the cause. Because the Gemara says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu megalgil schus al yedei zakai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings about a merit through a meritorious person, and he brings about trouble through a person who's not deserving. So for example, if there's a poor man on the street, so why is it that you happened to see him before I did and you were able to treat him to a meal or give him money before I did? Apparently you had a certain merit that you now have the merit of doing tzedakah more than I did. Why is it that when somebody got hit by a car, by accident, somebody ran out in the street and wanted to commit suicide, so why did he jump in front of this guy's car and not in front of that guy's car? Because the guy whose car he jumped in front of also had an account in heaven that he's going to bring about. It wasn't his fault. But you'd prefer not to be the guy who they dropped out, the guy dropped out in front of your car, right? You prefer not to be that guy. So apparently he's got some work to do, and therefore he's not meritorious. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it about through him, as about through somebody who is meritorious. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's how God runs the world. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. But we have to know that don't think, there was once a case, two interesting incidents. One was a kid fell off of like a very high area, like the third or fourth floor. So there happened to be a Hatzalah guy was about a minute away, picked up the kid and brought him to the hospital. The doctors worked on him and they were able to save him. They said that, had he come to the hospital 5 minutes later, he would have died. So the conclusion everybody reached was, well, it's a good thing the Hatzalah guy was 1 minute away from him. So Rav Shach said, no, you're reading the data. That is the data, but you're reading the data incorrectly. The data is the kid needed to fall. The parents needed to go through the terror and the difficulty of having their kid almost in that situation. And therefore, he fell where there was a Hatzalah guy 1 minute away. Had the Hatzalah guy been 20 minutes away, so he would have fallen in a different way, and it would have been a different situation. It's not, well, if the Hatzalah guy wouldn't have been there, then the kid would have died. It doesn't work that way. It's that the kid had to come within an inch of his life, and therefore those were the surrogate. If the Hatzalah guy wasn't there, the kid would have fallen somewhere else. In other words, what comes first, the chicken or the Hatzalah? That's always the question. And people misread the data all the time. By the way, there was an incident somewhere in America. I don't know when this was, but there was a guy was speeding. So the cops were there's some cops, they came up with the blue light and stop your car. So the guy stops his car, and he gets out. The police say, okay, get out of your car with your hands up. The guy gets out of the car with a gun, walking towards the police like this. And the police said, freeze, freeze, freeze. And he went, the guy kept walking towards, so they opened up and they shot, and they killed him. And then they saw that he was holding a toy gun. And they found a note on the seat of his car that said, I wanted to commit suicide, but I didn't have the guts to do it to myself. So this is the best thing I could think of. Sorry, fellow, sorry to do it to you. Right? So you don't want to be the guy who shoots him. You don't want to be the guy who shoots him. So sometimes why are those cops and that's like, well, so sometimes Kodesh Baruch Hu brings about that's idea number one. Now, take a look at the next pasuk. Well, we've covered a lot so far, a whole pasuk. V'atama Sarah b'Kiryas Arba hi Chevron. Sarah dies in a place called Kiryas Arba, be'eretz Canaan. Vayavo Avram lispod l'Sarah v'liv kosa. Avram comes to eulogize Sarah and to mourn for her. Now you'll notice that in the word v'liv kosa there's a small chaf, which means that in the Torah also, when you read it in the Torah, there's actually a small chaf. Now, according to one opinion, why is it a small chaf? Why is it liv kosa? He comes to eulogize her, and he comes to mourn for her, but it's a small chaf. Why is it a small chaf? Why is there a small letter there? So the Rashi says, take a look at Rashi. It's the 3 lines from the bottom in the right column. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Lispod l'sar v'liv kosa. V'nismecha misas Sarah. See where it says that? V'nismecha bisas Sarah la'akedas Yitzchak. The death of Sarah was juxtaposed. Right column of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Lispod l'sar v'liv kosa. V'nismecha misas Sarah la'akedas Yitzchak. The death of Sarah is juxtaposed to the binding of Yitzchak. Why? Lefisha al yedei besoras ha'akeda, sent by the news of the binding, shenizdamen benala shchita v'kimat shelo nishchat, parcha nishmasa bimeno mesa, her soul left her and she died. That's the juxtaposition. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say somebody does a mitzvah. You get rewarded for every mitzvah you do. We are clueless about how much the reward is. If we knew how much the reward for each mitzvah is, we would do nothing but do mitzvahs. But it's difficult for us to relate to. We only know that there's tremendous reward. If we understood what the reward was for a mitzvah, so we would never do anything but do mitzvahs. We would look for mitzvahs to do. Okay, that's part of the challenge, is to understand and be motivated to do it. On the other hand, after you do a mitzvah, is there any way to lose the merit of a mitzvah? How? Regretting it.
Face.
No, then it was never a mitzvah to begin with.
No, afterwards.
Afterwards.
It's fun, then you're like, oh, I did
No,
this.
that's just another. That's just a ha. I did the mitzvah and you didn't. No, then I get reward for the mitzvah, but now I get punished for being a jerk. Right? That's a completely different category. You're accountable for everything. Not only that, remember last time we said you could be doing a mitzvah while you're doing a mitzvah, you get rewarded for the mitzvah, but you lose certain merits, or you're going to be forget. As I'm giving tzedakah to the poor man on the street, I'm envisioning myself and the Chafetz Chaim, because I'm a tzaddik like him. So the haughtiness that goes with it, either stands as a avera by itself, or it decreases the merit of the mitzvah. But you can't say I didn't give him the money. I gave him 10 shekels. So I'm a big tzaddik. I did the mitzvah. I gave tzedakah. On the other hand, being full of myself reduces. Somehow, either it's an avera by itself, or it reduces the mitzvah. Okay, how could you lose the merit? It's exactly what Tamid said. You lose the merit of the mitzvah if you regret it. If you regret having done the mitzvah, you regret it. So you go to to help somebody out, and then you come back home, and your brother tells you, there's a football game on, and you say, you know what, I'm not going to watch the football game. I'm going to go to the hospital and visit somebody who's sick. Then you go home, and your brother tells you that it was absolutely the most exciting game he's ever seen. And it went to 4 overtimes, and the guy won with the last second. It was unbelievable, and your brother won't let up on you. He just tells you how it was unbelievable. And you say, boy, I wish I wouldn't have gone to the hospital. I wish I would have stayed home and watched the football game. At that point, you lost the merit for the mitzvah. If you truly regret it, you lose the merit for the mitzvah. Okay. There was a very big test, by the way, in 1985. I'm glad I didn't have to go through this test. There was a very big test in 1985. There was a guy in Chicago who was getting married, and he happened to be getting married in the afternoon, an afternoon wedding. I don't know why they did that. It just so happened that in that same afternoon, the Bears were playing in the Super Bowl in 1985. Zach said, wait, Zach, it's not even a test. For sure you wouldn't be going to the wedding, right? It's not even a test. Well, there was a test, because some people said, look, the Bears are in the Super Bowl. It's only football. This guy's getting married. And anyway, people only get married once in a lifetime. I'm going to the wedding. There were other guys who said, yeah, the Bears only make it to the Super Bowl once in a lifetime. The guy may get married more than once. I'm watching the football game. So it was a big test. And there were other people it was at a hotel. The wedding was those other people who were running upstairs, up and down, half and half. They were so it's a big test. Which one? Where that tells you what your priorities in life. Again, for me, I'm glad I didn't have to be put through the test. Like Zach says, for me, it wouldn't have even been a test, right? It would have been like a test in high school, right? Which I didn't do well on either. So say there's a test. I might regret it. So what happens? Avram Avinu comes back from the Akedah. He's just defeated the Satan, and the Medrash says the Satan was trying to stop him. The Satan turned himself, he made a big pool that they shouldn't. He created a pool of water, and they had to go swim through up to their neck in order to get there. And he came up to Yitzchak and he said, come on, you got a whole life ahead of you. Why are you cooperating over here? And he went to Avram Avinu and said, are you out of your mind? You're going to go slaughter your son. This is Hashem said. And the Satan understood that if Avram Avinu succeeds here, there's a merit for the Jewish people through all of his. We're still benefiting from this. We benefit from Avram Avinu passing that test. So Avram Avinu passes the test. He's passed 10 tests. He's passed. He's qualified. He made it. There's only one last shot the Satan has, which is what? Get him to regret it. How's he going to regret it? Avram comes back, and I bet Avram's a little excited about this. Hey, Sarah, I got to tell my wife, I got some good news over here. The Jewish people, we're going to have lots of children. It's going to be wonderful. And what does he find out? She died. Oi, how did she die? Right? She died because she heard the news of the Akedah. At that moment, there's another test for Avram Avinu. Oh boy, I wish I wouldn't have done this. So what does Avram Avinu do? Avram Avinu, he comes, he mourns her, but he doesn't cry a lot. Because if you cry a lot, what could happen? The more you cry, the more the emotion is aroused. Avram Avinu keeps it in control, so it doesn't get to the point that it makes him regret the Akedah. And that's why there's a small chaf. Lispa l'sara v'liv kosa. There are others that say that it is natural to cry less when an older person dies. When a younger person dies, so then, if it's a tragedy, people cry. When an older person dies, listen, what are we expecting? Expecting them to live forever? We're expecting them to live. So it's natural to cry less, except the irony is, when a younger person dies, People comfort themselves. They say, well, yeah, but it won't happen to me. When an older person dies, people just go, yeah, okay, it happened, it happens. The truth is that you should be sadder when an older person dies. Because when a younger person dies, you could comfort yourself. It won't happen to me. When an older person dies, there's no comforting. Everybody's on that list. Everybody is on the Sutton hit list. And everybody's going to get there one day. So there's no comforting by an older person. That's when people should really cry. But we do it the opposite. When an older person dies, people see it, okay, listen, what were we expecting over here? Younger person, gewalt to tragedy. On the other hand, if you want to comfort yourself, you can comfort yourself by the younger person. You can never comfort yourself by an older person. There is still a 100% mortality rate among human beings. Right? They all die, right? They all die. So Avram Avinu comes back to mourn. Now, what happens? Vayokam Avram me'al pnei meso. He rises from his dead. Vayedaber el b'nei chesed. Now he's going to negotiate for the Oras HaMachpelah, the Machpelah cave. Now, Avram Avinu knows, I'll tell you something slightly Kabbalistic. Avram Avinu knows that only somebody who died through Misas Neshika, there's a death, a kiss from God. That's what the Gemara calls it. The Gemara says that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, they died with Misas Neshika. They did not experience the angel of death, and the mothers, the imahos, did not experience the angels of death, the angel of death as most people experience him. Now, how do people experience the angel of death? So the Gemara says he has a sword, and with this sword he drips in a certain poison into the deceased, and it's that dripping of poisonous venom from the angel of death that causes the dead to to decompose and to rot. So what does Avram Avinu do? He needs to check how Sarah died. Did she die with what's called Misas Neshika? Or did she die through the poison of the angel of death? So what does he do? Vayokam Avram Avinu me'al Pinei Meso, from her face. Avram Avinu gets down very close to check to see what her face looks like. And if it looks like she died from the venom of the angel of death, then she can't go into the Maras HaMachpelah, because the Maras HaMachpelah is only people who died what's called Misas Neshika, that it was the death of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what it means is, if you want it in our terms, there are different ways the neshama can be taken out of the body. The more a person is connected to this world, the less they want to go. And the more physical and materialistic that a person is, the more painful death is for him. For tzaddikim, who have anyway suppressed the various temptations and the drives of this world, so the Gemara says it's like pulling a hair out of a cup of milk. You ever had a hair floating around in the milk? Okay, I'm not saying that's the most, what do you call it? But that's the example. It just kind of comes out smoothly. But for those who are not detached from the material drives, it's like pulling a clump of cotton out from a thorn bush. Yeah, that's bad. And not only that, when you pull cotton out from a thorn bush, what happens? Some of it even stays behind. It still gets caught. That means that neshama goes up to the higher world, yet it suffers because it still has that's part of Gehenna, is the desire for this world, and it's not even accessible. Whereas when you pull a hair out of a cup of milk, what happens? There's nothing left, and it comes out smoothly. So Avram Avinu, that means that a neshama of a tzaddik, listen guys, our neshamas don't want to be here. Whether you think it does or doesn't, our neshamas would rather not be here. A tzaddik is exposed to neshama. Why is it that, I'm just going from thinking, I just want to make something clear. Why does it say when Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, expose yourself to me? Why did Hashem say to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai? Man cannot see me and live. Why did Hashem say, what does Hashem mean by that? You can't see God and live. The answer is that if a person was exposed to God, the neshama would jump out of his body. The neshama has such a connection and such a drive to get there, he would just jump out right out of the body. I can't show you that. The burst of it, the attachment is so strong, the neshama would just jump. For a tzaddik, at a certain level, that's what death is. Death is being exposed. The neshama is given a glimpse of the good, and therefore it drives out of his body. It jumps out of his body. That's what's called misas neshika, a kiss, death with a kiss. That means it's almost painless. And therefore Avraham Avinu checks to see, does she deserve to go into the Marasa Machpelah, which she does. Now, he then starts negotiating. I just want to show you one point here. Then we'll have to stop, but I just want to show you one point here. Avraham Avinu goes to these Bnei Ches, the Hittites, and there's a man named Ephron. Yes, Ephron. And Ephron, the root of the word Ephron, by the way, take a look. There he is. And take a look at Pasuk Ches. Skip down to Pasuk. Vayidabri tam lemor, im yeshas nafshechem likbor es mesi milfanai. 6 lines from the bottom. Shma'uni upiguli ve'Ephron bechozar. Find the man named Ephron ben Sochar. Now look at that word Ephron. What's the root of the word Ephron? Ayin peresh, afar, which is what? Dust, dirt. Dirt. I mean, this guy's dirt. Because we're going to see that Avraham Avinu is going to ask to buy it. And the first thing he's going to say, no, take it for free. Take it, I'll give it to you. And Avraham says, I don't want it. I don't want freebies. Because he knows that when you get it for free, it's not a done deal. So Avraham Avinu says, no, I'll pay. So Ephron turns around and he says to Avraham Avinu, all right. And take a look at Pasuk Tesvav. Adoni Shma'eni. Top of page 108, 7 lines from the top, 6 lines from the top. Avram says to Ephron. Ephron says to Avram after this going back and forth, he says, Adoni Shma'eni. 6 lines from the top. Eretz arba meos shekel kesef beiniu veincha mahi. What's 400 shekels between friends? Ves meischa kvar, and you can bury your dead. 400 shekels was an exorbitant sum for a burial plot. Burial grounds are the cheapest area. And all of a sudden he goes from 0 to 60. 400. He goes, 400. Well, he says, take it for free. No, I don't want it for free. All right, God, what's 400 shekels between friends? And he jumps up to a ridiculous price.
Who suggested 400? Avraham suggested?
Ephron. Ephron simply said, I don't want it for free. So Ephron said, here, I got, what's 400 shekels between friends? Now take a look at Rashi here. Rashi says it's 3 lines from the bottom on page 108. Beinu veincha. What is it between? What's 400 is between me and you? Says Rashi. Bein shnei ohavim kamonu. 2 beloved friends like us. Mahi chashuv l'klam. It's like nothing. Ela hanaches hamecher ve'es meischak for. Let me have the money. So, there's an interesting question here. Rashi says, what's 400 shekels between 2 good friends like us? What kind of good friends? They just met. Shnei ohavim, they just met. It's the first time you never did know Ephron before. Where do you get that from? Not only that, if you take a look in the next pasuk, in the very next pasuk, Vayishma Avraham el Ephron. Avram listens to Ephron. Vayishkol Avron le Ephron as like he gives Ephron the money. Now you notice that the last time when it says le Ephron, up until now, Ephron has had a vav in his name. And here it says Ephron without a vav. Le Ephron. That means, Chazal say, he lost the vav. You know why? Because he said a lot and didn't even do a little. Avram Avinu, we learn from here, Emor ma'at, say little, it says in Pirkei Avos, say little, Emor ma'at va'asei harbe. Say little and do a lot. What did Avram do for his guests? He said, come in and I'll give you something, I'll give you some bread. And what did Avram give him? An entire meal, an entire repast he gives them. Here, Ephron says, take it for free, and then he goes and takes an exorbitant price. And what's interesting is, if you look at the name Ephron without the vav, Ayin is 70. Pei is 80. That's 150. Resh is 200. So we're up to how much? 350. And then Nun is 50 is 400. Ephron equals that 400 that he's asking from Avram Avinu. Even more than that, the number 400 is always no good. Where else do we find 400? Slavery in Egypt. Where else do we find 400? Good. Esav comes to greet Yaakov with 400 men, and he's not in a good mood. Where else do we find 400? Remember the famous story in the Gemara? Two guys bet who could provoke Hillel. They made a bet. Who could antagonize? Who could get Hillel upset? It was for 400 zuz. They bet 400. The number 400 always indicates trouble. 400 always indicates something not good. This Ephron is no good. And we learn from Ephron, Avram Avinu says little and he does a lot. Well, we say, let your actions do the talking. Let your actions do the talking. Whereas Ephron says a lot and doesn't even do little. I think I told you the what do you call it? We're going to answer that question tomorrow. What do you mean two friends? You just met the guy. What do you mean two allies? We'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think I told you when I was a little kid, when Muhammad Ali fought Kenny Norton. Remember Muhammad Ali fought Kenny Norton. And he talked and talked about what he's going to do to Kenny Norton. Talked and talked and talked. Kenny Norton beat him. He broke his jaw. And I just remember they had the on the cover of either Time or Newsweek, international news. So they had a big picture of Ali with his broken jaw, his swollen broken jaw. And I still remember the caption. I must have been about 12 years old at the time. The caption said, "The jaw is broken, but the mouth lives on." Right? I mean, so what good does it do? So you talk. So what good does it do? You talk yourself, but at the end of the day, you're lying on the canvas with a broken jaw, so it's no good. Avram Avinu doesn't talk, and he does. Ephraim talks, and he doesn't even do. We'll talk tomorrow about why they call two good friends.